This is the Lunatics and Legends podcast. In this episode, we are going to be discussing things that are for entertainment purposes only. Don't freak out. We're just having fun. This is the Lunatics and Legends podcast. Today, we have former Special Agent Fred Auzenne in the studio for the second time. However, this time we're going to be discussing some real spicy stuff.
That's right.
We're going to talk about MKUltra.
Right on. Let's do it.
For those that don't know, MKUltra, there's a lot of conspiracy theories around it, whether or not it was successful or not. I personally totally believe it was. It started off with Operation Bluebird, right?
Well, the way that it started was there were Korean POWs coming, or POWs from Korea coming back that had been converted to communism, and they thought that they were going to, they admitted to war crimes and all this stuff. So Allen Dulles, who was in charge of the CIA at that time, didn't want the Soviets to get ahead of us in mind control. And so that's kind of that was the impetus for the start. So he goes out and he recruits this guy, Gottlieb, who's the head chemist for the Army, right, to start this program. So the very start of it was at a CIA retreat in Deep Creek, Maryland, where Gottlieb laces a bottle of Cointreau with LSD and passes it around to his unsuspectingly, right?
As you do,
scientist.
Yeah, as you do as a scientist, because you want to, casual observance, right? And so, unfortunately, I think what I'm going to do is piss off a lot of conspiracy theorists today, but that there's no mind-controlled assassin. I mean, I think that what they did for 20 years was to prove that drugs, torture, electrocution didn't work. There's other things that worked, don't get me wrong, but not that. But that's kind of how it started. And then, so the guy one of the guys had a bad experience.
Yeah.
Right?
A bad trip? No kidding.
He had a bad trip,
man.
yes.
That was Allenson?
No, Olson.
Olson, thank
Yes.
you. Thank you.
So Olson, who is the bacteriologist for the Army, has a bad trip, comes down and says, I can't do this anymore. He starts getting paranoid because he had witnessed what they had done to some of his projects, right? Used it against servicemen. He started freaking out. I mean, it screwed with his brain. 9 days later, he goes out of a hotel room in New York. The CIA tells his family that he was depressed and
Right.
So this is important because 22 years later, something else comes out, right?
Right.
And so that's how it all got started. So now,
however, there is a lot more to that story as well.
oh yeah, of course, yeah. I'm just giving you like the background of how it got started, right? Yeah. So anyway, that's how it got started, and so they wanted to develop a program that could develop a Manchurian candidate.
Right.
That's the impetus of it.
Yeah.
And so that's the background of it. That's how it got started. And, what in his own testimony that was declassified just last year.
Yeah.
Right. He said that it was, they had some successes and failures, but because of the high risk, the high cost, and the lack of predictability, right? It was unreliable and unpredictable.
And this was Gottlieb's testimony.
Got
it. Okay. So
Yeah.
that was declassified last year.
Yep. And then an inspector general report that was also declassified that he wrote said that it was too unreliable, too unpredictable, and that the use of psychochemical experiments did not work.
But that was his testimony. That
was a memo. The testimony said the same thing as well.
Oh.
Yeah.
But we don't know what his actual clinical note said.
Right, because they were all destroyed.
Weird.
Right. No.
Wasn't it right around the time that he was going to be leaving the CIA?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think, well, of course. And so you have to ask yourself the question. If I worked on a project for 20 years,
mm-hmm.
and it was a success, why would I stop it?
I would say because bodies are falling out of 13th story windows.
Well,
but
it's worse than that. So let's dive in a little bit, right? So they shut the whole thing down in 1973, right? So it was
supposedly.
Yeah, supposedly. So you have basically from 1953 when they started at that Deep Creek retreat
Yeah.
to the time they shut it down, quote, in 73.
Right.
They supposedly destroyed all the records except for about 20,000 that got misfiled. And that's what got declassed. And so what they did is try to reconstruct that 20 years using those documents that weren't destroyed.
Right.
So,
but they were just like financial documents,
yeah,
right?
exactly. There was financial documents, what they paid for, etc.
There was a filing cabinet that was placed in the wrong room, and they discovered it, I think, during the IG investigation,
That's
right?
correct, yeah.
And basically, I believe it was 20,000 or 40,000 documents of just financial records.
Yep. And so they tried to reconstruct it based on that because everybody's dead now, right? So they're no longer around. So
I think that's arguable, but go ahead.
Yeah. So 22 years later, let's think about this. 22 years later, 1975, right? There's a document that surfaces called the Olson Matter. And it was a memo from Rumsfeld to Cheney saying the Olson Matter / CIA suicide about managing the family's lawsuit for wrongful death. So that's the guy that went out the window way back when, right?
And those two guys are just super reliable and trustworthy, transparent
No,
folks.
of course they are, right.
Yeah.
But,
friend of the show.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. So here's what they do is they end up paying off the family, and President Ford gives them an apology.
And an invite to the White House.
That's right. And so who does that first?
$750,000 in the 1970s.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, who does that first? Nobody.
Right.
So I don't think he was depressed, and I don't think he went out the window on his own.
Right.
Right. So that's 22 years later, right? So what was funny is that the memo never mentioned him by name. All it said was Army scientist secretly given LSD, who then added. Yeah.
Awesome,
right?
That makes sense.
So here's the sick part about all of that. Talk about mind control.
Yeah.
The government used that as a scare tactic for the rest of the population, saying, hey, if you take LSD, you're going to jump out of a window.
Right.
Turns out they were wrong. At least
That's right.
I didn't.
Right. No, neither did I.
Oh, you didn't either? Okay, yeah. All right.
Nobody. So, but that's what they used, right? As a scare tactic to control everybody else was his death. But he didn't take the LSD and jump out the window, did he? It happened after he came down 9 days later.
Right.
It wasn't when he took the LSD.
Right.
So interesting. So there's all these interesting things that occurred during the thing.
Yeah,
right?
that timing does not line up.
But the thing, and talking about things lining up, there was a man in the room, which we'll get back to in a moment, right, who was part of the CIA as well and considered to be his handler, correct?
Yep.
And that man was also in the same area of the United States at the same time as another famous conspiracy theory MKUltra situation of the Manson family, which also involved LSD.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Interesting.
Yeah. But so now it keeps on going, right? This thing keeps getting worse. So they have this thing called Operation Midnight Climax, right? So what they do is they literally run brothels in New York and San Francisco where federal narcotics agent and sex workers lure men in, dose them with LSD, and then they watch them through these two-way windows, right? Now, let me tell you how big Midnight Climax was. 149 sub-projects, 80-plus institutions, all structured money so it couldn't be traced back to Langley. So it's a pretty significant part of it, right? Now, it even gets better. So the federal agent that Gottlieb put in charge was a guy named George Hunter White, okay? So George Hunter White, sworn officer of law, actual job became luring citizens and doping with this LSD. That was his job, okay? Now, before the program ever launched, guess who was doing LSD for a year that was supplied by the CIA?
Who could that be?
Yes, George himself. So when he retired, I'm going to tell you what he wrote in his book when he retired. So he wrote a line that tells the whole story of the culture, right? He asked, in effect, where else, this is in his book, right? So I'm reading it, verbatim. Could a red-blooded American lie, cheat, steal, with the blessing of the government, with no oversight, no consent, having the time of his life. That's who is running the program.
That's wild. And it's also important to know that at that time, Gottlieb, you were talking about, he was taking LSD from, or not Gottlieb, but
Olson.
Not
Olson.
White was taking LSD from the CIA. Gottlieb was the one that went and bought the world's supply of LSD at the time.
Right. Because you have 149 sub-projects, 80 institutes. That's a lot of LSD you got to do.
Right.
Plus, you're doing this every night at brothels in 2 different major U.S. cities.
Right.
So you need a big supply.
Yeah. And, I mean, there's also the ability to then use it as blackmail, honeypot style.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you walk into a brothel, you're going to pay whatever, a couple $100. Somebody dopes you with LSD, you do all the stuff you probably wouldn't normally do. Now they've got you over a ringer if they want to blackmail you. But really, I think it was more observation, right? This is more,
I agree.
Yeah.
However, I don't remember who it was, but they said never let a good, totally spaced it. Never let a good tragedy go to waste.
Yeah, W.C. Fields.
Yeah. And so to that, like, obviously, if someone of prominence were to walk in there, not that any politicians would ever partake in ladies of the night.
Right.
However, now all of a sudden you got them dead to rights.
Yeah, sure.
You get what you want.
Right. Now, so I'm going to tell you how it gets worse.
But wait, there's more.
I mean, this is a whole shit show, right? So MKUltra didn't start from scratch, right? There was it was a continuation of the research that began in Nazi concentration camps. Okay,
right.
So that's where it really started.
Right.
We just kind of moved on to it. So to run it, the U.S. imported Nazis who had done it. Operation Paperclip in World War II. Right, the Joint Chiefs quietly brought more than 1,000 German scientists, right, to America. Many of them with documented SS memberships and camp experiments on their records. Okay, 2 of the big names. You're gonna love this. Walter Schreiber, he was the former Surgeon General of the Third Reich, and Kurt Blom, the Deputy Surgeon General who ran the Nazi bioweapons program and experimented in the camps with prisoners. That's who we brought over. So now Blom was tried at Nuremberg for it, but acquitted under contested circumstances. Some say because the U.S. wanted what he knew. 2 months later, America recruited him, and he was working at Camp King, a U.S. Interrogation site in Germany, occupied Germany, on the exact drug interrogations work that fed MKUltra.
Right.
All right, so what I want you to do is sit with the shape of that. America prosecuted Nazi doctors at Nuremberg for doing this, and then recruited them to do the same thing here. And we were, quote, perceived to be the good guys, right?
Right, but we also just talked about this, that there were all these scientists that came over here, and I have my thoughts on what that could have been. However, like, there's atrocious things that happened over there.
Oh my God.
We are so against these guys and all the bad things that they did. How dare they? How dare they? And then they're over here working for us.
Right. So the country that won the war based on the moral argument, right. is now bringing the losers over and all of this is because they're afraid the Soviets will get it first.
Immoral losers.
Right.
Don't forget.
Right. Moral losers. Right. But all because they thought, again, back to Allen Dulles, that they didn't want the Soviets to get it first.
Yeah.
Right. So they're willing to do anything.
Yeah.
Right. So when people call MKUltra un-American, no, it was the most literal way imported. We didn't invent that in darkness, right? That was, and then what we did is we recruited it, we gave it a security clearance, and we put it on the payroll.
Right.
So, so let's talk about why I think it didn't produce the Manchurian Candidate.
Okay.
All right. So you don't need it. You don't need that for mind control. All we have to do is look at Hitler a decade earlier.
Sure.
Right? He didn't have LSD, electrocution, torture, right? What he did is he controlled the environment. He controlled the amount of information. He didn't run on a platform of, hey, I'm gonna get elected and I'm gonna go kill 6 million Jews. That's not what he ran on. Right. He ran on, hey, we're gonna have this great Germany. We're gonna have the best country out there. We're gonna become an economic power, and everybody got behind him. And then slowly, over time, controlled the narrative, controlled the environment, only gave people what they controlled the news, and pretty soon you turned store clerks, bank tellers, fathers, store operators into type operators.
Right.
He didn't use any of what MKUltra did.
Well, and that is one of the reasons I take the stances that I take when it comes to politics is like, and or just life for that matter, is like, I think his step one was more, you've been oppressed, you've been victimized, and here's the evil culprit that did it.
Of course, that's what he eventually got to, of course.
Right. But
that's
I'm
not what
saying,
he ran on. That's not what he ran on originally, but that's what he pushed for. What he pushed for initially was, hey, we're going to have a better Germany. We're going to have an economic power. We're going to have jobs for everybody, right? That was his way of getting elected. And then what he started talking about was, well, the reason that you don't have what you say you want is because of, and then he started going down this path slowly but surely, slow burn. Pretty soon we got to get rid of these people, and then that's what it turned into.
Yeah.
And then it turned into, I want to conquer the world, right?
Right.
He had a pretty easy path into that too, because Germany coming out of World War I was really used up.
That's right.
They got the raw end of every stick that was available to them.
Yep.
And so it was very easy for him to come in and be persuasive and talk about how he was going to make Germany great again, because it was not.
Right.
They were in a very bad way after World War I.
Yeah. And so I think the problem with the CIA's model in MKUltra is what the Gottlieb's theory was: one, destroy a man's mind and then put a new one in there, for lack of a better term. So they got scarily good at doing step one, but not so good at doing step two.
Yeah.
Right. That's. I'm not saying that we don't do it.
Right.
But I'm not saying we do it that way.
And I would say that there are cases in American history and recent American history that would argue otherwise.
Okay. Like what?
Well, Ted Kaczynski talks about it in his...
But he did that to himself.
I'm talking about his time at Harvard.
Okay.
He was under what some believe, and as you well know, Harvard was one of the places, right,
Yeah,
where they were doing these things. Yeah. And he talks about how he went in through the psychological programs, and that was what led him to then become the Unabomber. Right. And in his memoirs, he talks about that. And I'm just saying that's pretty strong evidence right there alone. And I'm not saying that like there haven't been schools that went rogue or programs that went rogue and did their own thing. However, I would say that you have point B, right, which is he became the Unabomber and licked people. But his point A was that he was at Harvard and went through some psych stuff that is very much in alignment with what people believe MKUltra is.
Right. No, and I'm not debating that. What I'm saying is, if you want to develop a Manchurian candidate, this isn't Jason Bourne.
Right.
What they wanted to do was mind control. Hey, Eddie, I want to look at this person. That's what I'm talking about, and that's what MKUltra was designed to do. What you have is somebody that got experimented on and then went and did his own thing. That's what I mean by unreliable, unpredictable, and not repeatable. And so I think 20 years of MKUltra was a waste of money, because you can do it a lot of other ways.
I think that it depends on the rubric in which you're judging the situation, because could they ring a dinner bell and all of a sudden radicalize Ted Kaczynski? No, probably not. Or whomever else in his stead, right? Probably not. But then, why do at least 20 years of this? And that's, again, arguable if it's been shut down, right? Allegedly shut down, allegedly never opened, allegedly. However, I think you can do things like chemical alterations of the brain, and then you create, again, no bells ringing, no snap of the finger, and all of a sudden you have a super soldier. But I do think that you can alter the way that people behave through chemicals, and as well as you saw in Operation Midnight Climax and all those things, that there was a lot of subliminal messaging that was going on to them while they're in this altered state, void of conscious thought, and putting up the barriers that we put up psychologically in normal day-to-day cognition.
I think that it's pretty clear that most hard drugs, when used and abused aggressively, create some kind of agent of chaos. So if I'm tripping on some sort of a mind-altering hallucinogenic, you might not be able to control exactly what sort of chaos I co-create, but the reality is that I'm going to create some kind of chaos. So Ted Kaczynski, they might not have known that he was going to go beat the Unabomber, but if he was a product of that experiment, it's still a success because he still went off and did a bunch of terrible things. Could they make him do those things, Clockwork Orange style? I don't know, right? It's unknown, but I think to your point is that the repeatable part of it, like, sure, not repeatable or sustainable or
even predictable.
Yeah, predictable. And I think that's more of the point. It's not predictable what he's going to do. We know something, they're going to do something that's going to be harmful. We just don't know what it is.
That's right. And so that's what I was saying. They got scarily good at doing point A, which is destroying somebody's mind. Right?
Got it.
But they couldn't make him do a specific act of violence.
Hey, now, they're not going to create a Jason Bourne, is what I'm saying. And that's what they wanted to create out of MKUltra.
Instead,
and that's why, because you don't run something for 20 years and go, oh, the 21st year it works, so let's destroy everything.
Right.
I think the reason that they destroyed everything is because of the crimes they committed.
Right. To get there.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the
bodies are stacking up, literally.
The bodies are stacking up everywhere. We got to get rid of this stuff. We're going to jail for the rest of our lives.
Right.
So that's why they destroyed the evidence, not because it worked. I do agree, and to your point, is that when you do, because look at if somebody's on methamphetamine or some other things, like, I mean, they have this soup, they don't feel any pain. You have 25 cops taking down one guy, but and so they do create like this craziness.
Right.
But to have it reliable, predictable, be able to point that person at a target and get them to go kill that target, that never happened.
And I think that would be the difference between a sniper rifle and a shotgun. But if the goal is to create chaos or the goal is to create damage, mission accomplished.
Right. But how are you going to control that? That's the problem.
But you don't necessarily have to. If you're pushing a whole narrative of something, right? Say, for example, you take, fill in the blank, I'm sure they will, but you take this specific religion and you pit it against another specific religion, and your goal is to demonize said specific religion, you can then radicalize them or radicalize a person who says in the name of that specific religion, and then it blanket demonizes, because let's be realistic, like that's what our country does.
Oh, I agree 100%. But you don't need electrocution, you don't need LSD, and you don't need drugs, and you don't need for that to happen.
I agree.
Yeah, there are plenty of other forms of manipulation that we know are entirely functional in social media to do exactly that.
Right. So, think about Jim Jones. He walked 900 people into a jungle, and then they incarcerated him. Now, he didn't start that way, right? So I think who actually cracked mind control is not the CIA. I think it's Hitler, Jim Jones, all these other people who are able to control the narrative, control the information, control the environment. That's what got them to do things that they wouldn't normally do.
I believe there was, however, an actual alleged connection between Jim Jones and the CIA as well, though. And I mean...
that's alleged, right? I mean, there's no evidence, right?
Right. And why were there senators hopping on a plane flying down to Guyana for just some crackpot that,
Because they were getting complaints, and of course those senators end up dying, so they weren't going down there to see if it was working.
No. I'm not saying they were going down there to check up on the results. I'm saying if they were like, our guy here is going off the path. This isn't what we wanted. They're going down to check in on it, and
I mean, that's one theory, no evidence, right? So
fair.
Right? So, but when he walked 900 people, he convinced 900 people to drink cyanide. No, he didn't come out with that.
Convinced.
Well, no sleep, loudspeaker, control the environment. Remember what I said earlier, control the environment, control the narrative,
Right.
control what goes on, and sleep deprivation is probably one of the biggest weapons that he had, right? According
Yeah.
to the survivor.
But there were also people standing there with guns saying, we're going to, no, you should just drink the Kool-Aid.
Right, yeah. And so, I'd rather get noshed, which is some people did.
Same.
Yeah, right.
I'd rather die fighting,
Yeah,
personally.
of course,
But
yeah. So how about total isolation? He moved into the Guyana jungle. He controlled all the source of reality, controlled the environment, controlled the narrative, right? Got people to believe all this stuff. Loudspeakers, the only thing living in people's heads, his voice, right? He's got all this narrative about imminent nuclear holocaust, KKK running through the streets, and people are believing it.
right.
They think that the world's about to end.
Right. They've been disconnected from any sources, and they're just being told by repeated messaging where at a certain point it stops being voices on a speaker and becomes either your own mind
reality,
or it becomes God, right? Depending on the person. And he took the religious standpoint of it, so he became God to a lot of those people.
That's right. He controlled there because the only thing in their head was him.
Right.
That was the thing.
And I think that goes back to, like, we were kind of discussing the studies done with obedience to authority, Dr. Stanley Milgram.
Yep.
And I'll go down that story real fast, give the cliff notes of it, but it's a highly wild, I love this story. So Dr. Stanley Milgram in the 60s, if I'm not mistaken, set up a situation where he would have a participant pressing a button, and he would have a participant that was going in another room that was going through a memory test, right? And so he would mention off some words, and that person had to then repeat the words back in order, or they would get shocked. And so the participant, he'd say like balloon, kite, shoelace, spatula, and they would have to read it back in the order. And if they did it wrong, the other participant would shock them. And it, would increase in electricity every once in a while.
Voltage goes up.
Yeah. So they get it wrong, voltage goes up, right? Person gets shocked even more. Mr. Prozzi was the one that they really focused in on to tell the story about this, right? Who was the one that was pressing the button. The guy in the other room kept getting it wrong. And he's like, look, I have a heart condition. You have to stop this. And Stanley Milgram was in the room next to Mr. Prozzi and going, no, he knew what he was getting into. I take full responsibility for this. Shock him again. And it continued on. And I don't quote me on the statistics because I didn't look it up. However, it was something like 60% of people would shock him after he was the participant as dead and laying on the table after, and it was 80% of people would continue to shock him after he said, I have heart problems, you're going to, essentially proving that the average human, at least at that time, was so obedient to authority that Dr. Stanley Milgram would stand by and go, I take full responsibility. They knew what they were getting into, press the damn button. And again, 80%. And this is not just American society. This has been repeated in multiple countries. That experiment has since been banned in the United States for good reason. The aftermath, and to go ahead and get to it, the guy getting shocked was an actor.
Of course, yeah.
The guy, Mr. Prozzi, and whoever in that spot was the actual test experiment. And to find out what level of depravity we would go to if an authority figure told us, no, press the button.
I wonder how you would.
No, but see, it proves my point. You didn't need LSD.
Yeah.
You didn't need to electrocute somebody, sleep deprive them, or anything.
A totally sober mind was completely breakable.
That's right. So you don't need to break into the mind. That's what MKUltra was trying to do, is break into the mind. Force it, drug it, shock it. But if you control everything around the mind, what you hear, what you talk to, when you sleep, what you're afraid of, the mind does the rest.
I wonder how you would do that experiment at scale, like globally. I wonder if maybe there was something like what's that P word that if you came up with a pandemic, that's the word.
Penn and Teller.
A Penn and Teller.
Pandemic.
Yeah. I wonder how you would. Yeah,
Is that with an L? Plan?
A plandemic.
Yeah.
Plandemic.
Well, here's another one.
PAN.
I don't know anymore.
Here's one not as brutal,
Right.
but it proves the point. So what they do is they set up a waiting room, like a doctor's office, and they have 5 or 6 people sitting in the waiting room. And the guy who's coming in for the real appointment goes in, and it's one of those where you have to check in on the iPad.
Yeah.
And he sits down. So in a few minutes, one of the people in the waiting room stands up. So the guy sitting there reading a paper looks up. Well, maybe he's, probably thinks, well, maybe he's getting tired sitting there.
Right.
And pretty soon, another person stands up. Pretty soon, all of them are all standing there. Guess what the other guy does?
He stands up.
Stands up. No mind control, no drugs, just the social environment.
Right.
Right. And they repeated it over and over and over. I mean, it was sad to watch. And even some guys in the beginning were like, what's wrong with these people?
Yeah.
Would stand up.
They even actually did that on Impractical Jokers as well.
Yeah.
And it happens.
Yeah, it happens. So again, back to the mind control thing, I don't think you need all of that stuff in order to get mind control. And you can look at history, right? So do you remember, you'll love this, remember the UFO Christian group?
Yeah.
The Halley Bop group? Yeah.
Yeah. Hail Bop, Heaven's Gate.
Yeah, Heaven's Gate, exactly. Yeah. So what did they do? They dressed the same. They took different names. They believed that this body's just a vessel. Now, when the guy started, he didn't say, hey, we're going to all get together. That's not what he said.
Right.
But slowly over time, and then sleep deprivation, relentless repetition, doctrine, information lockdown. The members only knew what was being told to them. And then the comet comes around, and quietly, on their own, 39 people drank phenobarbital and vodka and passed away.
Right.
And you would sit there, and you're sitting there thinking, I would never do that. Well, I don't know.
Right.
Right? You don't know until you're in the situation. And it was incremental, right? He never opened up with, right? He just said, hey, we're gonna. If he did that, nobody would have come, right?
Right.
He would have had 0 followers. Nobody would have. Yeah.
Let me pitch you this real quick, but hear me out. Yeah. You're gonna love this.
You're gonna love it, right?
We got some really nice shoes for you.
You're gonna come back.
We got
seconds,
this nice
I
outfit
promise.
you get to wear. So let's talk about Charles Manson, all right?
Right.
So Manson isolated the family in a remote ranch, right? That's how he got started. Controlled food, sleep, what they ate, what they drank, what they heard. He used sex and LSD socially, right? Love bombed, lost young people at the end of the day.
Right.
That's what he did. And he relentlessly reframed reality on that ranch, right? Because he controlled the information, controlled the environment, controlled the behavior, right? So he broke down the old walls and the source of truth. And so there was a journalist, Tom O'Neill, spent 20 years on the book Chaos, right? And found genuinely weird things, right? Manson got bizarre leniency from the parole officers despite drugs, guns, violations. And a psychiatrist named Jolly West, funded under MKUltra, was operating at the Haight-Ashbury Clinic, where they were doing what? Handing out LSD, right? So,
and Jolly West's specialty was violence, hypnosis, and brainwashing.
Right. And
just so we're on the same page.
Right. And so I think if you read O'Neill's book, right, he wrote that he admits he never found the smoking gun, right? Never found the connection. He says, I know what we were told didn't happen, but I know what did. And here's my problem with the Manson as an MKUltra theory. If the goal was programmed assassin, why point him at a pregnant woman, an actress renting a house? What's the target value there?
I would say the answer to that is her husband being such a part of the counterculture. I would say that the Manson family being such a part of the counterculture, the ability to exploit saying LSD was bad and that the hippies should get off of it so that they would leave the hippie movement alone, the spitting on soldiers, all of the protesting against the Vietnam War. And Jolly West actually wrote Gottlieb and said that he achieved MKUltra's mission at one point. Now,
okay.
I don't know if these were connected. However, there was a letter where, meaning I don't know that Gottlieb was the one that started Jolly West's adventures in MKUltra, or if he just did his own thing and then later was like, hey, that thing you were attempting to achieve, well, I achieved it. Look at Manson. However, there is the connection there.
Right.
And again, Like you said,
the
they want to
evidence
be
is
able to
lacking.
point
Yes.
directly.
Right. Like you're not going to get a Jason Bourne out of a Manson, right? This
Right.
is chaotic and weird and all kinds of.
Every bit of unpredictable you can imagine.
Right. Exactly.
Well, so for example, at one point, again, similar situation, the Aurora shootings.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to be real with you. The moment that I started researching that, when it happened, I was like, mind control. I don't believe this happened. And here's the reason that I say that. And granted, this is the softest evidence right now, is that when he was arraigned the following day, he was like dozing off and just incoherent. Granted, if you just killed a bunch of people, I get it. Like, you're probably not going to sleep very well in jail that first night.
They
right?
might have also doped him up to make him neutral and not wildly violent. Yeah.
Sure. However, what never made sense to me was that A, he went in there with so much armor on, B, that he fortified his apartment and rigged it up, and yet the moment that he was caught, and all of a sudden out of this psychosis, he goes, oh, don't go into the apartment because I did this, that, and the other. If you're going on a mission to destroy as much as possible, wear armor to destroy as much as possible, to be taken out by officers, and then later booby trap your own house to destroy them and evidence, why would you surrender and then go, oh, and don't go there or more people are going to die?
Right. Well, I mean, you can't figure out an illogical mind with a logical mind, right?
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And so
anyone who's been in a relationship gets that.
Right.
Hey-o.
Oh.
However, my
That's a
point.
personal issue. No, so
No, stop. She's
back on track.
fantastic. You
Back
trying to
on
get
track,
me punched,
boys.
Fred? Shh, we don't talk about that. No. My point of that is that they used that for gun control and gun
Oh
confiscation.
no, I don't. Again, you're proving my point that they use these things for mind control all the
Right.
time.
Right.
Like, yeah, I mean, if you think about, guns do not kill people,
Right.
right? I have lots of guns in my house,
Same.
right? Not one of them has got up on their own and get a mustache,
Right.
right? It takes the person who's doing it. So it's like saying, oh, we should outlaw cars because everybody's driving drunk, right?
Right.
Somehow
It's
the
just a
car's
tool.
fault. Right, it's a
Yeah.
tool. And so when things like this happen, people are going to grasp onto that and use it for their own agenda, however that looks. And I don't think anybody set that guy on that school. I think that's what he wanted to do. Again, when people get radicalized, right, you only start to hear the things that will fit for you,
Right.
right? So then you join these groups, you join these societies, like you start, like, how do you? So people become radicalized, recruited, assets through what we call mice, right? So there's money, there's ideology, there's coercion, and ego.
And this is coming directly from you being a former special
That's
agent.
correct. Yeah, that's how we recruit people, right? Those four things or some combination thereof.
Right.
And that's how you get assets to do things. So foreign assets usually sell out their country for ideological reasons.
Right.
Americans sell out their country for money. Now, you use coercion and ego to get people to do things that you don't want them to do. And it's always start with a little yes. So when I used to do presentations, I would say, here's what's going to happen. You're going to get approached by somebody and they're going to ask you something like this. Hey, I work as an insurance guy and I want to start talking to the people on base. Can you get me a base phone book?
Right.
Well, you know that a base phone book is classified confidential.
Right.
And they're like, oh, sure, it's no big deal.
Right.
Oh, here, by the way, let me give you $500 for that.
Yeah.
And then it's a little more and a little more and a little more. And now they have all this evidence. Oh, by the way, here's a snort of this. And pretty soon they have what they call leverage on you.
Right.
And now they ask you for the plans to the submarine. And you're like, I can't do that. And you go, well, I got this evidence here, right?
Right.
And so that it's slowly over time, so that you're controlling the environment, you're working on their ego, you're coercing them through what we would call exploitable weaknesses. So that's how you recruit sources and get them to do things that they normally wouldn't do. So, but there's the challenge isn't that I don't think they did on MKUltra.
Right.
And the challenge isn't that I don't think that the CIA is selectable.
You don't think that the CIA kills people?
I think they do it. I think they've committed every crime unknown to man, and it's proven by MKUltra that they'll do whatever it takes.
Oh, I thought you were saying that you don't believe that they do that. I was
No, I do believe
Fred,
that.
cut the shit.
No, that's not the argument. That's not my argument.
Right.
My argument is MKUltra did not produce a Manchurian candidate.
Okay.
Got it.
Okay.
That's my argument, right?
And ultimately, it did create all kinds of chaos.
Oh my God, 20
And
years
so
worth.
Minimum.
At minimum.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mission still accomplished, just not in the way that they set out.
Well, think about this. So let's look at a couple other simple examples, right? So I love Nexium. Do you remember Nexium? It was NXIVM. So this operated until 2018. And this proves that it never went away. So Keith Rainier ran Nexium as a professional development executive coaching company near Albany, New York. Okay, people paid thousands of dollars for his executive success program. Looked like a legitimate corporate training program, and was a respectable veneer. But it was a trick. It pulled in successful, intelligent people, including actresses and heirs to different fortunes. Incremental commitment from a normal seminar down to a secret inner society called DOS, sold as Women's Empowerment Sorority, which was actually structured as a master-slave pod.
I remember this. I'm just like everything you're saying. I'm like, I studied this at one point. Yeah.
Yeah. So they got women who joined to hand over collateral to damaging confessions about their families, financial information, material that would destroy them if it was made public, right? It was a loaded gun in your reputation, self-incrimination tools, and then there was low-calorie starvation diets, sleep deprivation, finally physical branding, right? Right? And it would actually end up being Rainier's initials, right?
That's what, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so again, there were no LSD, there was no interrogations, right? This was slow, incremental change, smart, intelligent people being controlled by the environment, being given the information, having coercion, the C in mice, right? No compound, no jungle, no SD, just coaching seminars, human psychology, and it was running until 2018. So Rainier gets convicted. He gets 120 years, right, for asking, racketeering, and it ran until 2018. So this is new. So I think when you look at this stuff, I'm not debating that mind control isn't real. But you know what the biggest mind control device is right now?
I do.
It's right here. And you pay for it.
Yeah.
You defend it. You carry it around with you.
You're showing your notifications right now.
Oh, there you go. But that's how mind control works.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
right? It's called control the media, control the information. Listen, we're living. What do you think Hitler did with all the news media outlets? Right?
Propagandized.
Right. It's propaganda. Right. They have a whole psychological warfare division. Right. That works on this stuff.
Yeah.
So that's how mind control works. Right. You demonize the other party, the other people, the other religion, your neighbor. It doesn't matter.
Right.
And then what happens is your mind on its own will start to develop, be able to see or recognize. It's called cognitive dissonance. You're going to go and look at the evidence that supports your
beliefs
viewpoint,
and the things that you see.
And it filters out everything else.
Well, and I think that there's a ton of that going on right now in politics as well. However, I think that we fundamentally agree. I just think that at a certain point we're branching off in opinion, because I think to say that they didn't have success with that is like, well, okay, one could believe that, but also, how the hell would you know if they did?
Well, what we know is that they didn't based on the evidence. Now, what I'm saying is, if you want a program that is going to put someone through a process that at the other end is predictable, reliable, right? That didn't happen with that program.
I would not argue against that. I think that there is absolutely, it could have been a failed mission, right? And they went, well, here's how we can exploit it.
That's right.
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 I'm not arguing with you on that. What I am saying, however, is that there is a very real possibility that they did have success with it. Now,
Well, he
again,
even said-
laser pointed, no.
Right. But he even said we had just as many successes as we had failures, but it was
He being Gottlieb?
yeah.
Right.
But he also said that it was super expensive, too risky, unpredictable, unreliable. So that was the outcome of it.
Yeah.
So obviously, if he said we had just as many successes as we had failures, they probably had some successes.
Yeah.
But again, at any program, doesn't matter if you're in business, if you're in athletics, you want predictability, reliability, and repeatable action. And I don't think that program produced it. I think what it might have produced is, oh, this didn't work,
Yeah.
but this will.
A program we don't even know about. I would say
That's
that
right.
having been a drug addict in my youth and been on mind-altering hallucinogenics many times, there is, to me, my experience of that, there's no way that something could have controlled my mind when it was out of control.
Right.
Not to say that they didn't create a whole other program that we don't know about that
Right.
did take it to the next level.
So I think, again, they accomplished some stuff, and I think we're both in agreement there. I'm just saying as well, they could have still figured it out. And you said Gottlieb said himself there was as many successes as failures. So I would say that there means there was success with that. And I'm saying they probably went like, okay, we messed up. We're in the news. It's time for us to take our pee-pee smacks and we're going to shut up for 20 years, let people forget about it, and then we're going to start doing this. Now, where that has gone on since then, who knows? I'm just saying there are a lot of outlying indicators that I wholeheartedly believe, and I'm sure you do as well, that the CIA would absolutely exploit to get a person pinpoint accurate.
Well, and not just the CIA, right?
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so it's not
There's
just
all sorts of factions at this
Right,
point.
that's
Yeah.
Right. So because that's the ultimate end game, right? If I can control people's minds, get them to do things I want them to do, when I
Right.
want them to do them, how I want them to do it, right?
Right.
So that's always been the challenge.
Which is all the more reason that I hate any type of government that has overbearing, tyrannical, whether it be left or right.
Doesn't
But
matter, right? I mean,
you create dictators.
the CIA operates with impunity at the
Right.
end of the day, right?
Right.
So don't come kill me. We get it. Everybody knows that, right? The president doesn't even know the budget for the CIA.
Right. You're not depressed. I'm not depressed.
Right,
Brandon's
right.
not depressed.
I'm not depressed.
Right.
Yeah. But at the same time, guess who else is doing it? The FSB, the KGB, the GRU, right? We can go down the list of every intelligence agency out there attempting to do the same thing,
Yeah.
right? And so, so it's a mess, and I think that there are better ways, and I think we're all victim to it, right?
Right.
We have TikTok, Facebook, social media. To your point earlier, right? This is controlling a narrative.
Right.
Right? All Republicans are bad. All Democrats are bad. All white people are bad. All black people are bad. Doesn't matter.
Right.
Right? Depends on the information that you're getting.
Right.
So if you control if you control the environment, control the narrative, control what's being said,
Right.
you can get people to do things. I mean, it's been proven over and over and over, and you can get them to do it in mass
Yeah.
or individually.
I think that we have been in a psyops for many, many years right now.
Yeah.
All of them, all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
The problem is that, so we talk about the dumbing down of America, right? So you look at the educational institutions are no longer teaching what would you call critical thinking.
Right.
It's like they're teaching indoctrination. Believe this way. This is how it is. Here's the evidence to
Right.
prove it, and then they believe it. And
But I think they've been doing that for years as well.
right, but so if you're a critical thinker, you start thinking to yourself, I don't know if this is true.
Yeah.
I'm going to see if it's true.
Right.
Right. And then you start to explore on your own. You start to investigate on your own with your open mind. And then you look at and see if this is real or not.
Yeah.
And what I think if people started doing that, they'd find that what they've been told isn't the truth. I think what they got really good at is controlling a whole country's narrative.
Yeah.
And so when you do that, then you get people on their own that already have that in their brain that are willing to go do things that you want them to do
Right.
because it's already there.
Right.
You don't them putting something into them to get them to do something different is where I think they failed.
Yeah.
In that method. There are other methods that I think they have discovered, we're a victim to it right now, that are getting people to do things on that side of the coin.
Well, and I would say to that, there is enough people with wildly different ideologies that you can find the person that's easy to radicalize.
Of course.
And so I agree with you that, like, kind of played out, they don't necessarily need MKUltra because they can easily radicalize somebody by studying their ideologies and then, like you were saying, putting them in an echo chamber and creating a super soldier in a different way, right?
Yeah, they don't need all the drugs.
Right.
And it's better that way, by the way.
Go on.
Well, somebody that's on a drug is going to be unpredictable.
Right.
Somebody who's not, they're driven, they're single focus, they're myopic on what they want to do, and they go for it. And
much more predictable.
Right, they're much more predictable. So even think about way back when, I don't know how long ago this conversation started, when I talked about the POWs that came home and they had been converted to communism and
radicalized.
Committing, radicalized. That wore off when they got back to this environment. See, so even doing it under coercion that way, for a while it worked, but when they got back to a different environment, it wore off. What you want to be able to do is take someone that in any environment still has that single focus of whatever.
Right. And they were subjected to it by forced entry.
That's right. Versus volunteering.
Right. I think I would speculate that the reason that they would divert away from, hey, we're brainwashing this person, whether it be through drugs or, whatever, is that they wanted the ability to be like, even under torture, this person's not going to remember that we, the CIA, set them up to go do this thing. As where if you take somebody who has this radical ideology, right, and you don't, as the CIA, you don't go to them directly. You don't go to their person directly. You put all these steps in place. You fund it in certain ways, and you just run it down a chain that you can easily detach the chain and go, nope, we didn't have anything to do with that. And so they can still get a person radicalized. They can still implement the things that they want to implement. However, they have now massive plausible deniability.
Well, yeah. Well, they have massive plausible deniability. They didn't have to put somebody in a test tube. They didn't have to do all this stuff.
Right.
They developed what was already there.
Yeah.
And that's, so anyway, I think, I don't think any of us disagree on that, right? You can read a lot of books on it. That's not us sitting here saying that, right? That's been proven a lot of times.
I would also like to say, to go back to it real fast, shush you.
Okay.
The guy who did the Aurora shooting.
Yeah.
He also was in a program like Ted Kaczynski, where it was a psych, like, evaluation training, blah, 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 to earn money on the side while he was going to college.
Yeah. So you never know. And I'm not saying that down. I'm just saying that what they set out to do, which was blow up a person's brain and put a new one in, never worked. I think what they figured out is they don't need to do that.
Right.
That's what I think they figured out.
Then I'd say we're pretty well on the same page. Yeah. I'm just saying that there could be a possibility that
That's
did
still
work.
Going on. Yeah. Look, anything's possible. Right?
And it could even still lead back to it did work. However, it's not necessary at this point.
Yeah, because we have this little thing here.
Right.
Yeah. Everybody wants 10 seconds information, right?
Yeah.
Why do you think podcasts have become so popular? Because there's a certain subset of the population that want a different conversation than 30 seconds of TikTok.
Right.
Or 2 minutes of a social
news
media
broadcast.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
or they don't even want to listen to a news broadcast.
Yeah. There are tons of, and podcasters and content creators are absolutely eating the lunch of these big news organizations.
Of course. They have more followers. Some of these podcasts have more followers than any mainstream news media ever had viewers.
Right. And you look at the Sean Ryans versus the Brett Baer. Like, nobody gives a shit about Brett Baer, but millions of people watch Sean Ryan, Joe Rogan, Lex Friedman. Like,
I have a hard time sitting there for 2 hours watching a Joe Rogan.
I'm the same way.
Yeah.
I have,
but
no
I can
interest.
listen to it on the plane. But Yeah, but there's quality information. At least there's a discussion about two opposing viewpoints, right?
Yeah.
Like, we don't have to be enemies because I disagree, right? It's that's the whole point. But see, now we live in a society that if I disagree with you, right, somehow now we have this barrier.
Right.
I mean, have you ever watched these, and it happens on both sides, but somebody's having they're having some sort of event where they're protesting something, right? And somebody goes out there and starts asking the question.
Right.
Why are you here? Well, he did this. Well, what did he do? Give me a specific example. He's done it thousands of times. Well, give me one example. And they can't give him one example.
Right.
So that's mind control, right? This person showed up to this event because it fit their narrative already in their brain.
Right.
Not because they have any empirical evidence that ever happened.
Yeah. And I think that is absolutely, to your point, and I'd say also mine, is that, like, absolutely, we are getting so spun up that it becomes this completely polarized, and that's the reason you and I can sit here and have a friendly debate. And, I've talked to people that are hard opposing where I stand politically, and I've been able to have a respectful debate. And at the end of it was just like, yeah, you know what? Great conversation. Appreciate your time. I haven't been swayed too much. However, I've taken a little bit away. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And you can do that. But like, people get so spun up about their identity tied in with people that couldn't give a shit about them.
Locked into their ideology,
right?
Who they are, their identity is their ideology, and
they get locked into it. They're not willing to look at things, and
for that to be wrong is something that they're just not mentally, emotionally ready to deal with. I mean, you were talking about keeping people in their environment. POWs come back and they're reindoctrinated to life in the West. How do you keep people in that environment?
With the phone.
With the phone.
Right.
That's how you keep them in the environment daily. And it works very effectively.
Well, and I think here, whatever side of the debate you land on, here's what we can agree on. When you destroy evidence, you forfeit the right to be believed what it should have shown.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's what leads to the conspiracy.
Yeah.
Right? You forfeit the right. And then what ends up happening when you forfeit that right, you don't have to burn the file and then tell us what was in it.
Right.
Yeah, that's not how it works.
That's not how it works. So I don't know that it succeeded. Nobody can. But what's for sure is that trust us, that was what was in the file, that doesn't work.
It doesn't work because then you end up with people like me who are conspiracy minded, right? That look for the flaws and the holes in the narrative. However, it works in as much as then you can have, again, that plausible deniability where you go, well, then prove it. And then you get the Fred Auzennes where you can go, they never prove shit.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. But you cannot destroy evidence. Tell me what was in the evidence and be believed.
Right.
At the end of the day, that's what happened.
But I would say it is infinitely better than what they probably could have proved with the evidence.
Well, what the problem is, and whether they prove something or not, the problem is they would have definitely proved is all the crimes they committed.
Yeah.
And they definitely wanted to cover that.
Some very damning information, right?
Yes.
And
why else would you burn it?
That's right.
And with all of those crimes that they're covering up, why would they go so far as to commit all those crimes if this was just some bullshit experiment where they're just dosing people with LSD and watching them have sex?
Right. Well, the problem was that it took them 20 years. And so obviously they were having some failures. And so
I'd say obviously they were having some successes. 20 years.
No, but why? See, if they were having success, why keep doing it? See what I mean? If I figured out that if I did this protocol to you and it worked, that's all I would do. I wouldn't need to go out and find 149 different places, run all these different experiments trying to make it work.
Right. So the argument would be then instead is that, again, to it, you're saying that it wasn't a success because they couldn't pinpoint it, right? So why would they then do the 20 years of experimenting versus I'm saying, yes, they could get somebody to do that stuff through whatever means necessary. And they've literally killed people to get that. But why continue to research it if they had been able to hone in on it in the first couple of years?
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, and I don't know. None of us know because, just like I said, they destroyed all the evidence.
Or, hey, we're already able to funnel money into this unquestionably.
Yeah.
So let's use this as the umbrella to funnel out to other programs.
Yeah.
Right. And I think they're doing a really good job of mind control without all that.
At this point,
Agreed,
sure,
yeah.
but I think
Yeah,
they
very
found a way to get there.
Yeah, and so I think the way to turn somebody's head, get them to do what you want them to do, and what they've been doing for a long time is mice, right? Using monetary ideology, coercion, and ego, right? You install the motive. You don't install a motive in the person. You already find out what's sitting in them, and then you control the environment, you control the behavior, you control the narrative, and they do it anyway.
And then you control them.
And they're all driven that way, right? So, because we all have that, right? In some form or another of things that we want. In our lives. You want to be a family man, you're going to do that. If you want to be, a good whatever, you start to do that because it's in you. It wasn't put in you.
Well, and that goes to the psyops that we have going on right now, where it's like, I consider myself a patriotic American.
Yep.
I'm sure somebody on the other side believes they're a patriotic American, and the other person on the other side, because I am not in this, two-party system. They believe they're a patriotic American, but it's all about the route and how to get to that utopian America. And some people believe that destroying America is the way to get to that utopian America. Right. And so they get radicalized through
Why
the other
do you think there's this resurgence of socialism, right?
Yeah.
They think that's a good idea.
Right.
It's been proven time and time again.
Talk to anybody who's survived a socialist government.
It doesn't work, but it sounds good on paper.
And Jordan B. Peterson just recently said that as far as the most wild results driven attachment to socialism is low IQ. That when they did studies on it, the overarching statistic was when a person was a socialist, they tended to be a lower IQ. Now, granted, of course, Jordan B. Peterson is going to have his own opinions considering, which side of the field he's playing on.
People reach for these terms and they have no idea what they mean. The most anti-Semitic culture out there is calling people fascists, other people fascist. And I'm like, you obviously don't know what a fascist is, right? So,
right.
Otherwise you wouldn't be using that term.
Right.
They just reach for terms because it's a motive.
Right.
Not because there's any basis in fact. And to your point, if you're not read up, intelligent, whatever you want to call it, then you believe that. You think, oh, right, that's what they're doing. And the truth is that's not what they're doing.
Right.
But it's what you want to believe.
Yeah. And for a very long time, that was the end all be all. All I have to do is call you a fascist, call you a Nazi, and anything that you say is invalid at this point.
That's right. Even
And
though
dehumanized him with those words is where your intention, but those
Right.
words don't dehumanize anybody anymore because they're so grossly used out of context.
Right. Agreed.
now everybody's a fascist if you don't like them.
There has to be a fascist logical fallacy at this point. I'm sure it falls into a subcategory, but my point being
right. Well, and if you don't believe the way I believe, you're a racist. And if you don't believe the way I believe, you're whatever, right?
Insult.
Insult, yeah. Both sides doesn't matter, right? Doesn't matter.
Very true.
Right? You're just amassing evidence to prove that you're right because you have this, this philosophy. And it goes back to my point of if people would just sit down and start doing some research, start looking at, argue with, if we're having a discussion and we're reading, we've studied, we obviously did some research before we got here today. Then I go, oh, I didn't know about that. It's interesting. I'm gonna have to, now because I'm thinking in my mind, there's a couple other things I want to look at now.
Right.
But the idea is, if I want to live, if I'm, why am I taking the word of somebody else?
Right.
Just
Back to
because
critical
they're
thinking.
in a news station of talking head,
Right.
I'm supposed to believe what they say. I'm sorry. I need to do my own research.
Yeah.
Let me dig into this a little bit.
Yeah.
Because if you actually had an honest conversation with most people, you would find that what you believe about them is not true.
Yeah. However, you also want to paint them with a broad stroke because you believe this ideology.
Of course.
And there it is.
Right. It's cognitive dissonance. I'm going to only see what I want to see.
Right. And I see it so much on both sides. And
yeah, doesn't matter what side you're on.
Truthfully,
Truthfully, doesn't matter. Both sides do it. Let's be real, right? It's almost impossible to have a discussion with them because it's all emotion.
Right.
It's not basis in fact.
Right.
So if we want to sit down and discuss, because, the truth is, like even Bill Maher, who is a
grifter.
No, but I wouldn't say that. I'd say he's liberal.
Yeah.
But what was liberal then is not liberal now.
Agreed.
Very true.
Right? So I think he's still holding his line. I just think that the line that he was on has moved so far left.
Yeah.
He's like, oh my God, this is not what I signed up for.
And I would say the same about the right.
No, of course. Hey, man, we're moving way too far that way.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to sit down and discuss and come up with a solution
Right.
that 85% of us can get behind and push.
Yeah. And
It's either this way or that way, and there's nothing in the middle.
I think the wild thing is that we don't talk enough about society to the younger generations. And so you have these Gen Z kids that like have no idea what it felt like immediately after 9/11 because they weren't even born. Right. And
same thing with World War II, Korean War, right? All that has gone by the wayside, and it's not.
We don't have a unifying event for this generation.
I think the unifying event for this generation is the fact that they don't have a unifying event.
Right.
I don't disagree with you, but they're never going to see that way. And how do you explain a situation and a circumstance to someone that never, that wasn't able to experience it because they didn't exist yet? You can explain it to them. We can explain World War II. We can explain all of these different things, all these unifying events.
Vietnam, et cetera.
Yeah. But how do you get them to have that same emotional attachment to it?
Yeah.
Well, I think where things are going off the rails is that the unifying event is largely the fact of hopelessness. I'm never going to be able to afford a house. I can barely afford a car. I get paid trash. And and so there is a sense of victim mentality there. And I'm not going to say that it's arguably wrong.
No.
However, now you're having things like the situation going on with Iran that is happening but isn't happening, and it's only supposed to happen for this little amount of time, but it's not happening. And gas prices are going to continue to soar.
Food prices are going to continue to go up.
Agreed.
So I love gas prices because if you look at Exxon's profit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, their profit margins are
So you would think their profit margins would decline.
Right.
Or stay the same.
Right.
Based on, right? But they're almost double.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you?
That
it's bullshit.
Right. They're manipulating the market.
That they're hyperinflating everything. Right. And when the times are good, they're freaking great. And when the times are bad, they're pretty freaking good.
Great for them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what they've done.
Can we go back to MKUltra? Can we do that? That was a simpler topic.
Those were simpler times.
That's right.
But no, my whole point is that I think there is a unification of Gen Z to be feeling as though they're desperate and they can't believe in the American dream because it's not going to be there for them. Right. And I think there's multiple things that are the driver and the catalyst to them feeling that way. And then they're being swept up by socialist ideologies because I'm never going to afford a home. I'd rather just the state give me a shit box to live in. And, it's no wonder that they're steering
marching towards you'll, have nothing, own nothing, eat bugs, live in a pod, and be happy.
Well, or you'll go to universal pay system, all that stuff. And it's but the problem with the universal pay system now, that's Big Brother, right?
Right.
Oh, you know what? You were not so nice to the government on your podcast. You're only going to get half your pay this month.
Yeah.
Right. So now we're into Big Brother stuff, right?
Right.
So now where goes our freedom? So it just goes on and on and on.
I mean, you put them in a bread line because you control the bread.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying is that like more opportunity needs to be created for the younger generation.
Of course.
And like largely a reason that I'm a capitalist, largely a reason that I'm an entrepreneur is because I want to be able to do that. I don't want to hire some intern and pay them trash for whatever venture I'm working on. I think people ought to be paid well because then you're going to get a better performance out of them.
Well, and it should be paid on
merit and accomplishment.
Not
Agreed.
because you're black, white, green, yellow, purple.
100% agreed. Or age or whatever.
Doesn't matter.
Just saying,
if you produce results, here's your pay, right?
Yeah,
That's it.
we're talking
I
about
want a successful business. I want people that are going to produce results. I can care less about anything else. Yeah. Talk about incentivizing people to do more and accomplish more.
Right.
And I think, the biggest, we talked about it earlier, the biggest challenge that you have is the employee that existed pre-COVID no longer exists.
I was just about to mention that. They
So
do
that's
exist.
a challenge.
They do exist, but that's why you have to place them on a results-driven performance
'Cause otherwise,
metric.
they won't,
Yeah. But it was absolutely COVID. I remember being in a Home Depot right as COVID was going on. And granted, I was in another state. However, there were people at McDonald's dropping F-bombs through the speaker system, like at the drive-thru. And I'm like, excuse me? What?
That's the McDonald's I would go to.
We're out of fucking coffee, man. So go somewhere else. Became the attitude because it's dystopian. There's no hope in anything any longer, right? And that's kind of where we're at. We need to revitalize the market and create wealth
for everybody.
by creating
More
wealth.
Yeah, not by. So it's so funny because people complain all the time about food prices. Right.
Right.
So you go to the what used to be a $5 sub sandwich is now $17.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm sorry, when you increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour, I'm sorry, this is just economics. This business needs to stay in business. It needs to pay its rent, needs to pay the employees, needs to buy food, needs to pay for the air conditioning, etc. So if you force the business owner to pay an additional $10 an hour, guess what's going to happen to the price of the food so that the business can maintain its profitability?
It has to go up.
So now the problem is the people that eat McDonald's are the people that are typically on a lower end of the pay scale.
Right.
And what you've just done, right, is reduced what they can actually buy because you increased the price of the food.
Right.
And then in order to keep the food prices reasonable, well, now you got kiosks and you have less employees.
Right.
And it just goes down the list, right? And
so less employees means less workers in the market. There's less people being able to afford rent.
it just goes on and on and
It
on.
does.
And then there's this whole mind control thing happening with
Right.
the information dissemination.
And who is it that's always going to make their dollar regardless
That's right. And
of
you gotta
how much you're getting
follow
paid?
The money. Follow the money.
The government. The government's always going to make more.
When you track down terrorist groups, narco-terrorist groups, all of it, right, in my day and still today,
Right.
follow the money.
Right.
It's the same thing here. Follow the money. Who's making the profits here?
Yeah. And it's
Anyway, that's
they're
there you
sweeping
go.
up the people that are in that headspace of dystopian futures and going, here's the answer to it. And I'm obviously a free market guy, and here's the thing: if we have a flawed system in capitalism, if you want to call it that, right, what we have currently, and it's not able to sustain in the market, then I guess it has to go away. And I don't want that. I'm definitely a capitalist. However, if we've allowed big corporo capitalists to come in and eat things up and create oligarchies and such, then, well, here we are.
Well, I think what you have is this division, right? You're gonna have a Monaco curve, right, where you're gonna have a bunch of rich people and a lot of poor people.
Yeah.
If we don't change things, because America used to be shaped on a bell, right? And so they're destroying the middle class, right? So I can see why people get pissed off.
Yeah. Fred, you are clearly a very intelligent man. You have insane stories and training, and I know we're totally shifting gears right now.
Sure.
However, I do want to talk about the program that you have going on.
Sure.
Because I think your years as a special agent, your years as a personal development coach and facilitator, and all the work that you've done leads you to be in a very specific position, niche, if you will, that you've created something that I want people to go check out.
Yeah. So I think what I do now is I kind of flipped it the other way, right? So when you think about the same lever that they use to trap people, right, is the same lever I use, but I use it to set them free, right?
Right.
So you're running behaviors based on your environment, and those behaviors have become a habit. That habit is unconscious to you. So that's why you can drive home from work and not remember every turn, right?
Right.
That's why you don't even think about taking a shower anymore, right? You just go do it. It's why you drive your car the way you drive, because it's all habit now.
Right.
And so that environment, right, has installed things called choices, right? But the choices have become unconscious. So it's like, hey, I'm not going to have ice cream. So you tell yourself consciously at work, I'm not going to have ice cream tonight for dinner, after dinner, or I'm not going to have a drink today, or I'm not going to whatever. So you've told yourself that 10 times consciously in your mind. And what are you doing after dinner?
You're thinking about it.
You're either thinking about it or doing it.
Fair.
Right? And why is that, right? You didn't choose it. It was already chosen for you. The minute you closed your laptop, the minute you opened the kitchen door, the minute you got in your car, some cue, some trigger, push some dopamine in your system.
Right.
Call it a dopamine reward loop. So your reward is the alcohol, your reward is the ice cream, your reward is whatever. And so your brain does not really see I can't, I don't want very well. Because when you say it sees in pictures, it's how we learn to read.
Right.
See Jane run, see, right? Lots of pictures, little words. Then a few less pictures, a few more words, and then do you remember the day that you had to read a book and there were no pictures, right? So it's like the worst day of your life, right? So
Second worst, yeah.
But that's
At that point,
at
sure.
that point, right. So that's how your brain sees. So when you say, I don't want to eat ice cream, what does your brain see?
I want to eat ice cream. Yeah.
So it sees ice cream. I don't want to drink. It sees the drink. Then you have a reticular activating system that filters out anything that's not known to you, that's not safe, right? A period of habits. And so it filters out anything else other than the ice cream or the beer or the drink or whatever. So you get set up and you can't beat it with willpower, because willpower is a depleting asset, depletes out over time. And that's why people end up in the same job, just a different color of the carpet, same amount of money at the end of the month, even though they've gotten 5 pay raises, same relationship, just a different name, right? Because they think they're not going to do something, and yet they continue to do it.
Yeah.
Right? So willpower is the same mistake that the CIA made, right? Trying to force a mind head on. See, and if you don't force it, you redesign the conditions around it, then the behavior changes itself. And then the behavior operates on autopilot. So I do it with alcohol performance, with high performers, right? It's the same principle, right? It's the same principle that spies use, only I point it toward freedom instead of a trap. So the CEO 90 program, right, is a way for people that have the performance variable is now alcohol. So it quietly costs them things, right? It's not like you woke up one day and said, I drank too much last night, I never want to drink again. If you did that, most people would just stop drinking, right?
Right.
But that doesn't happen. What happens? I'm not going to drink today, I'm not going to drink today, because it became a habit. It started off as the celebration. I closed a big deal.
Right.
It started off as the, hey, I'm going to the airport. I'm going to go to the lounge, have a drink before my flight. It started off as the drinks on the golf course. It started off in different ways, right? And then because of your environment, right, especially as a high achiever, right, it's a stress reliever, it's a relaxation, it's a stress relief, it's a social lubricant, whatever the mechanism is.
Right.
You developed a habit over time, and now it's just unconscious. It's what you do.
Yeah.
But now it's costing you something.
Right.
It's costing you the deals. It's costing you some, you come home and the wife's like, who's showing up tonight? The kids don't know. Your partners don't know, right? You're kind of no longer the life of the party. They're like, hey, he's had one too many, right? All of those things start to happen.
Right.
And it wasn't happened overnight. It just happened slowly over time. And so when you wake up and you go, man, and then you say to yourself, I'm not going to drink tonight. I'm not going to drink on this trip this time. I'm not going, and then what are you doing? Drinking on the trip. So from the 30,000 foot view, the NIH says that or American Medical Association says about 30 million Americans have alcohol use disorder. And they classify it as mild, moderate, severe. So if you're in the severe category, that's like the alcoholic, right? The person that needs recovery, they're like a 6+.
Yeah.
So where do the other 80% go?
To the bar.
To the bar, because that's what they do.
Yeah.
But they're like, I don't want to go to the bar anymore. And so CE90, Clear Edge 90, is about getting your edge back, living an alcohol-free advantage life, meaning that meaning that you get your edge back that you used to have. That's what put you in the position in the first place, was because you had an edge. You were a hard worker. You did the things. You did the tough things to become a lawyer, a doctor, a high achiever, an entrepreneur, a business owner, right?
Yeah.
And so now you're having, two high balls between board meetings, right? And you can say whatever you want, but it's not the same as testing whatever you want.
Yeah.
You can say I'm okay when I have my 2 or 3 drinks, but you don't test that way.
Yeah.
It's a bullshit line, right? So the idea is for the 90-day program is to change the environment, change the behavior, right? Keep the reward. The reward's just different. And then what ends up happening at the end of 90 days is you're just a person who doesn't drink. You're not a person who doesn't want to drink.
Well, and this is a way for people to get away from alcohol addiction without having to hit rock bottom.
That's right.
Right. And granted, I've been sober 3.5 years. I did not have to hit what other people's rock bottoms are.
Right.
I'd have a couple drinks and then I'd black out, and I don't want to be that guy anymore. Right. It was fun when I was in my teens. It was fun when I was in my 20s, but it is time for me to get serious about life. And granted, I hit my rock bottom and was super embarrassed and didn't want to ever do that again. And so I gave it up because of that. But you have been sober this whole time that I've known you, and you're able to be around people that drink and it doesn't trigger you at all. Like, clearly you figured something out, and you do have a history with alcoholism.
Yes.
And you've survived all that. And like, I think it's amazing that you've taken your life's experiences and created a whole system for people to go through if they're looking to sober up without having to hit the rock bottom. I personally was depressed and super embarrassed because both of you you guys have been instrumental in the changes that I've had in my life. Anybody who's curious can research why. However, you guys have both coached me, and I was feeling like such a piece of shit letdown. I don't want people to have to hit that rock bottom. So if somebody is going, you know what, the alcohol is getting out of hand, how do they look you up? How do they get into your program?
So just go to clearedge90.com. And what's interesting, we have a little assessment there. It takes 5 or 8 minutes. And this isn't my assessment that I made up, right?
Right.
So the whole program is based on 30 peer-reviewed clinical studies, right? So everything that we're doing is based on neuroscience, based on evidence, empirical data. And so there was these 2 guys, they came up with this assessment. And basically what you're going to do is self-respond to some questions. And it's going to give you exactly what it's costing you financially, physically, emotionally, relationship. It's going to tell you where you're operating on a scale of 1 to 100.
Yeah.
And then if you self-report honestly, you're going to get an honest report. And then you can look at it and go, if you're scoring like, let's say 50 or 60 overall after you look at all 4 areas, what would it be like to operate at 90 or 100%?
Yeah.
Right? What would it look like for your family, for your self-esteem, for your money, your pocketbook?
Yeah.
Because believe it or not, it costs you money. You don't think it does because you have success.
Yeah.
You can point to your car, you can point to your bank account, you can point to your job, but yet at the same token, it's costing you something.
Yeah.
But you're not a candidate for AA. You're not a candidate for Freedom by Design. Yep, and there's a little assessment bar right there. And so you're not it's not AA, right? It's not a 12-step program. You don't have to stand in front of people and you put your label on yourself. That's not what it's about. It's not about going to a recovery center. It's about those 80% of people that know that alcohol is costing them something. They don't want to do it anymore.
Right.
So I would submit, because of the training that you did with us, when you had that moment, you had some tools that you could use.
For sure.
Do you see what I mean? That's a difference. And so what we do is I give those people the same tools you had, but they're at a different, it's just a different angle that you're coming at it.
Right.
And you go, and then they go, oh yeah, I can do this.
Yeah.
And then you're just a person who doesn't drink. See, most people think they have to have the drink, as an example. Well, if I need it to relax. Well, yeah, drinking does interfere with your cortisol level. The problem is your cortisol level bounces back when you stop drinking. So you're paying for the stress relief in spades the next day. So what we find with people is their sleep becomes better. So they feel better. they're the same person at 9 a.m. that they are at 9 p.m.
Right.
So when they're at the board meeting, when they're closing the deal, you have an edge against your competition.
Right. And
Everybody else is drinking and you're not. I'm sorry, you're going to have a quicker mind. You're going to be quicker on your feet. You're going to think clear. You're going to be much quicker on your feet.
Right.
If that's important to you.
Well, and like, let's go back in history, right? You watch the show Mad Men.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's smoking cigarettes and drinking, right? And you're seeing a big shift nowadays in executive C-suite people that they're starting to veer away from alcoholism as well, or alcohol rather, because they want that edge that you're talking about.
So think about this. It used to be, hey, a couple of drinks a day is no big deal.
Right.
They've walked that back.
Right.
The Surgeon General, the NIH, everybody has walked that back.
Yeah.
That it doesn't matter. They've been able to relate 20% of cancer patients to alcohol use. I mean, the list goes on about how bad it is for you.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Now, if you have 2 drinks a month, nobody cares, right?
Right.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the person that's using it, right, as a stress relief, as a social lubricant, and all the things that you just said.
My problem is, though, is if I have 2 drinks, I'm going to have 20.
Right, of course, because that's where you go.
Right.
So the idea is, so what happens, and they've been able to demonstrate this, University of Illinois did an MRI study, and the drinking shrinks your prefrontal cortex. So your prefrontal cortex is your executive center. That's your conscious mind. That's your long-term planning. That's your reason and logic. That's your goal setting. That's where you hear the voice, I am. And it operates deliberately, right? It's a deliberate operation. Alcohol shrinks the prefrontal cortex. So the very thing that could keep you from drinking is the very thing you're turning off by drinking.
Weird. So it becomes an addiction, huh?
Well, and I don't know if it's an addiction as so much as it's just a habit.
Yeah.
Right? It's just, so if you could put in a new pattern, a new neural pathway, if you will, that produces a different habit, then it'll just run you on automatic. And you won't even think about drinking. You'll just run your life that way because that's what you do.
Yeah.
And so that's the whole idea behind the program. It's not to willpower, white knuckle, stress yourself out about not drinking. That's not going to work because willpower will fail.
And it's like crash dieting. Like
Right.
you change the lifestyle, you change everything.
Right. It's not the diet.
Right.
It's the lifestyle, right? And it's not, so I could go to the gym every day, but if I don't do anything while I'm there, who cares?
Right.
So the idea is, hey, if I can start to, so what we do is we put people, first thing I do is make them consciously aware.
Yeah.
So if you're sitting here listening to this and someone says, well, how would I know? Here's what I would suggest. Count the drinks that you have every week for a month. Because everybody goes, I just have a couple glasses of wine.
Right.
I just have a couple beers.
Oh, I would lose count.
Right. But because when you consciously write it down, you're like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Right? It's like when we do our wealth building seminar. First thing I have them do is write down everything they spend their money on in a month.
Mm-hmm.
And we come back for the next iteration, they're horrified
Yeah.
at what they spend money on. Yeah. It's the same thing with drinking. You track your drinking for a week or a month, you're going to be horrified.
Right.
And then maybe you'll be, because what I do is the first few weeks of the program is to become consciously aware of all that.
Yeah.
What's the cue? What's the trigger that gets you going? What's the routine that you have? What's the reward? And we're gonna track all of that. You're gonna write them down, right? And we're gonna track all of that stuff. We're gonna track your sleeping. I mean, and the reason that I work with high performers is because they're used to doing hard things.
Right.
Because I want to do that too, but I say I want you to track your sleep hours. Oh, that's hard. Yeah. Okay, this is not going to be for you, right? So
Right.
you see what I mean? Like there's activity that you have to do. You have to do your part. I'll do mine.
Mm-hmm.
And then we track all that stuff and we start to see the marked improvement. And the truth is in the first 30 days, you're going to start thinking clearer, sleeping better, feeling better. Then the next 30 days, you're going to start running some habits that you haven't run before. And then the last 30 days, you're operating as though you never drank.
Right. And it's that chipping away at the perfect self, right? Your volumetric efficiency. If you're pulling 1% every week, well, now your volumetric efficiency is at 60% and you're trash and you're trashed, right? And I would say that anybody who's even questioning it, it's free. Go check out
get the assessment.
Look at the assessment.
And the truth is some people will call me and they're really a candidate for AA or recovery.
Right.
And so I'll give them those resources.
Right.
You know, the first few people I had call me, I'm like, oh, here you go. I go, you're not a candidate for this.
Yeah.
But you are a candidate for this. Have you tried this? Have you tried this? No. Okay, here's some resources.
Right. Because you actually care about people becoming sober. You're not choosing
You're not
this.
just saying no just to say no.
Right. I'm not saying no. Right. And so.
And I meant the assessment is free, by the way. I don't want anybody going like, you bastards lied to us.
Yeah. No, and so if you're not a candidate, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Right. But if you are, I'll say that too. But there's a lot of people that. So like I go to recovery, right? So there's a lot of people that come to the room, and they do some stuff, and then I never see them again, but they're still not drinking.
Right.
Why? They found a way to break it up through that model, and now so they weren't really what I would call quote an alcoholic or severe case. And so that's what I started noticing. I've been for over 44 years is that people do that. I'm like, why is that? What's happening? And then I started looking at my Army training and human behavior, and then all the time I've been spending in neuroscience and I'm like, there's something here
Right.
that I'm an expert in, that I could help people in. And I think that working with high achievers is great because they're willing to do the things that unsuccessful people are not willing to do.
Right.
Like I'll work with anybody, but you got to be willing to do the work. If you don't do it, because it's you got to do the work.
Yeah.
I can give you all the information, all the help, all the neuroscience, all the things to do, the exercise to do, the things I want you to do. We can have the coaching sessions, we can have the one-on-ones, all of that. But if you don't go do it, it doesn't matter.
You can build them a Porsche, but they got to put the gas in it.
Yeah. So if I go to work out with Brandon every day, right? And I stand there and look at Brandon, I don't think I'm going to get his arms, right?
Right.
But
Reality, yeah.
I got to do the work, right? I got to do all the stuff, even though I don't think I can. But if I'm going to go do it anyway, just because I want his arms, then I got to do what he does.
Right.
And so you got to do the work.
That's what I'm saying. As far as like people might be on that cusp of greatness, achieving the things that they want to achieve financially or relationship wise, emotionally, all the things, just maybe even learning to love themselves. And this absolutely is a game changer because like I said, with my life, like I never would be here right now if I was still drinking.
Right. You would be doing something else.
Right. And it was getting to a point because again, of all the TBIs that I have, mortar rounds and all that such, I would go out and I'd just be like, yeah, I'm going to have a couple beers. And then I'd be like, you know what? If I don't shoot whiskey or Jägermeister, I'll end up having fun, right? So I'll just take a couple shots of tequila and just loosen things up and have a good, happy time. And then I'd be like, I can drink whiskey and I'm blacked out, right? And I got tired of waking up and going, oh God, well, A, I'm not in jail, so that's cool. But B, what the hell did I do last night?
Well,
and who do I owe apologies to?
Right. Well, no, if you look at a human, their most productive time is right after they wake up.
Yeah.
That's when you're like when you start taking a shower and getting going, your brain is going.
Right.
And so when you drink, it compresses that.
Yep.
Right. And so that's the problem. You're not the same person at 9 a.m. that you are at 9 p.m. when you drink. There's 1,000 pieces of evidence to prove that.
Yeah.
You don't feel that way initially. You feel like, oh, it helped me become social, or it helped me do this, or it helped me do that. And it probably did at the beginning. But now the reward is what is causing the damage.
Yeah.
And so, but your brain doesn't know the difference. It keeps doing what it's been trained to do without you even thinking about it. Your conscious mind is slow and deliberate. Your unconscious mind is super fast and accurate. It happens all the time. So within 200 milliseconds of you thinking something, your brain's already, if your cue is closing my laptop at work, in 200 milliseconds, your subconscious already got dopamine. It's already anticipating the drink. If you use willpower and don't take that drink, your body feels like it's in withdrawal.
Yeah.
And then you're craving it more and more, but I'm going to willpower it out. Yeah. So, it's not about white knuckling. It's not about willpowering out. It's about living your life in alcohol-free advantage.
Yeah.
Right? Where you have the advantage of living the life that you are meant to live without the performance value of alcohol. That's, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
Hit him with the web address again, Fred.
Yep. So clearedge90.com. Get your edge back.
Awesome. Fred,
right,
thank you for coming on, brother.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
coming and
Fred,
having me on. I appreciate the debate.
Absolutely. It was great times.
Thanks, man.
Are you tired of big corporations farming you for views? So are we. We're just two poor guys that are trying to put together a podcast. So if you can give us some help by doing a like, share, comment, subscribe, or save, it helps us trend in the algorithms. Thanks.